sometimes something bad is happening in life and it turns out to be, actually quite positive for me. Like, I have cancer, I'm on chemotherapy, and I'm actually at the moment quite happy about it because it takes my thoughts away from what is going on in this country when you have to deal with other things, especially when it comes to an illness. So you're concentrating more on your stuff, on your treatments, on your medical treatments and everything, and you are not so vulnerable to what's going on in this country, although I love this country, and it does bother me a lot what's going on. So I'm talking more to people here. This podcast is more for people who know something about Israel, who know Israeli politics, who know Israeli politicians, the names and everything. I just have to turn off my phone, just a second. And so that's it. It's actually quite strange, maybe even a funny situation. We have a Knesset party here in Israel called Yamina, run by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. At the previous elections I think it was in March, they got 6 seats. 6 seats. Basically nothing. They hardly made it over the threshold. And Naftali Bennett, and especially Naftali Bennett, but also Ayelet Shaked, they used to be right-wing, and their party is called Yamina, right. And, it's the whole name of the party is actually a lie, because they are not right-wing. They are left-wing. They are entirely left-wing. Naftali Bennett, when you see him, he's got this little pimple kippah on his head, pretending to be an Orthodox Jew, but he's not. He's a Reform Jew. And as you know, he's going to join Yair Lapid, who is completely anti-Judaism, anti-anything, and an extreme leftist. So Ayelet Shaked and Naftali Bennett, they promised their voters before the elections that they would never go together with Yair Lapid or any leftist party. And then Naftali Bennett especially was making zigzags. He went here, he went to Netanyahu, and he said, I'm going to join your coalition. And then he went back to Yair Lapid. Those of you who know Israeli politics, they know that actually Lapid and Bennett are very good friends. They've been friends for many years. I don't know where they met, maybe in the toilet somewhere. I don't know, but they became friends. And so it doesn't surprise me that they go together because they are friends anyway. And they suit each other. They really suit each other. It says that already in January, the two had an agreement. And what causes a huge shitstorm here in Israel is that Naftali Bennett he only got right votes the previous elections from right-wing Israelis. They don't want any leftist party. So he made this false claims, false promises, and this is the first time in Israeli history that actually a party has been screwing its voters so much. It has never happened before. I mean, every party, every politician says something, he lies, he doesn't lie. But no one in Israeli history has ever lied that much as Naftali Bennett. Ironically, he got many votes from Chabad. And Chabad already right after the elections, when he announced he is sympathizing with Lapid, so Chabad wanted its votes back. Of course, this is impossible. But what Lapid did, and this is what causes the biggest shitstorm in this country, especially when you go to social media, is that he lied all his way through. And he said many times that he would never enter a leftist government, that he would always form a right-wing government with Likud and Shas and everybody else. So this is how he got his votes, from the right. And he only has, don't forget, he only has 6 seats in the Knesset. It was a few weeks before the actual elections that he gave a speech on TV and he announced himself as prime minister because he thought he would get more votes. But in the end, he didn't, because Gideon Sa'ar, he left the Likud and formed his own party called the New Hope Party, Tikva Hadasha. Has no agenda, has no nothing. The only agenda is to get Netanyahu out. But Tikva Hadasha is a party without any agenda. So is Yamina. Well, Yamina with Bennett, now called Smaller, or should be called Smaller, they at least have an agenda. They go together with Lapid, not only with Lapid, but also with the extreme leftist Labour Party, went with the extreme leftist Meretz, and with the Arabs. With the Arabs. The Arabs are going to be involved. And it said, I read this news on Facebook last night, that the Arabs are getting the Knesset part of the Ministry of the Interior. Meaning that, what's his name? Mansour Abbas, whatever his name is, from one of the Arab parties, Knesset parties, he will be in charge of certain internal Israeli affairs under Lapid, under a Lapid government, meaning that the Arabs would be in charge of the entire prison system in Israel. They couldn't release all their prisoners, the Arab prisoners, of course, but they can, get them the best conditions, the best food, steak every day, whatever they like. So the Arabs, maybe, if this all is coming true, we will see today and tomorrow, because it's going to be announced today, tomorrow, in the course of this week. So then the Arabs are going to be in charge. An Arab party is going to be in charge of Israeli prisons, also of women affairs, and of, how can I say it, Yesha, Judea and Samaria, where many Israeli settlers live. So just imagine there's an Arab from an Arab party sitting in the Knesset, being in charge of Israeli prisons. Just this alone, it has to suck a little for a moment. What else are the what is this so-called agenda of this Lapid-Bennett leftist government with Meretz and everybody? Jerusalem may be divided. This is like top of agenda of the Meretz so-called coalition partner. Jerusalem is going to be divided into a Palestinian state, and Hamas already said all the Jews have to move out of Jerusalem. Israel will be on sales. Judea and Samaria under the Lapid government will be partially given up. So Jews have to move out or stay with the Palestinian Authority. And I called this podcast, Is Israel becoming an anti-Semitic country? In a way, yes. And if you're considering to make Aliyah as, let's say, as a religious Jew, you have to take into consideration that Lapid and Bennett made an agreement to get rid of the chief rabbinate in Israel, meaning the level of kashrut is going drastically down. They want to involve this Zohar movement. They have already made a written agreement. The Zohar movement is run by this Rabbi Staff, who a couple of years ago wanted to become the Ashkenazi chief rabbi. He didn't succeed. And then he was so literally pissed off that he went against the Rabbanut and he hates everybody because he didn't get the position. And I always wonder where the Zohar movement is getting his finances from. If it's George Soros, if it's certain movements here in Israel supported by George Soros, also supporting the Zohar movement. I could not find anything about the finances of the Zohar movement, who is actually behind it, so to speak, who is financing, whose budget it is. I mean, it's not Rabbi Staff financing this on his own. There is definitely someone behind. I've forgotten the name of this organization in Tel Aviv run by George Soros. I thought it's New Israel, or I don't know, Israel Fund, New Israel Fund. That's a big organization in Tel Aviv supported by George Soros, funded by George Soros, and they are everywhere where something is against Judaism, Orthodox Judaism. They are also financing and supporting 50,000 illegal immigrants from Africa living in Tel Aviv or staying in Tel Aviv. So they are involved in all kinds of things, and I wouldn't be surprised if this whole Zohar movement is financed by George Soros or supported by by people who are very much against anti-Judaism. You could say that Zohar is better than nothing, than no kashrut. But you know, when you go to, for instance, I'm just giving you an example, when you go in Jerusalem here to the Machane Yehuda market, and you look at Basta Pasta, they sell spaghetti and all kinds of things. And they have, they abandoned their Mehadrin Herrscher from the Rabbanut, and already some years ago, and they have the Zohar Herrscher. What you see is, when you pass there in the morning, they have Africans, illegal Africans, whatever Africans. It's not Ethiopians, it's Africans, not Jewish. And they are doing the cooking. And there's no Israeli in. You only see Africans. You see 2 or 3 Africans, and 1 Israeli girl is at the till. So you have the Africans cooking, and you wonder who's turning on the stove. I'm sure it's Basta Pasta is Bishul Akum. I'm sure it's Bishul Nochri. And the Zohar movement doesn't care. You have something, you know, whereas the Rabbanut, or if you have especially all these Badatzim, the Badatzim Herrsherim, you can be sure that it's kosher. So now in Israel, even in Jerusalem, you have to go around which one is Rabbanut, which one is whatever Badatz you prefer. And if someone has the Zohar, you shouldn't trust. You should definitely not trust, and it has nothing to do with religion. And as I said, I wonder who is financing, who is really behind this movement. If it's George Soros, if it's a New Israel Fund, whoever it is. Yesterday, one of the Meretz politicians who is going to join the coalition with Lapid, her name is, I don't know her first name, her last name is Sandberg. She wants to introduce a law in the Knesset that Chabad is not allowed anymore to put tefillin on minors. And she bases this law she wants to have, and any Chabadnik doing this, being caught, is going to be sent to court, to jail, to whatever. It's going to be taken away by the police. So she bases it on a Christian missionary law we have in Israel, that no one is allowed, but this law applies to Christians, Christian missionaries, that no one is allowed to so-called missionary or proselyte minors. Soon later, the Israeli counter-missionary organization Yad Le'achim posted something or made an official statement that for years they have been asking this Ms. Sandberg, supporting them in their fights against missionaries. And nothing has ever come up. But as soon as it comes to religious Jews, so not only Ms. Sandberg, but everybody in this new leftist coalition is going against Orthodox Judaism. Now you can say with Chabad, you can say it's right, it's wrong, whatever. You agree, you don't agree, whatever. But take into consideration, don't forget that this may be only the beginning. This may be only the beginning. You already, as I mentioned before, you have an Arab being in charge, apparently being in charge not only of Israeli prisons, but of Yesha. Yesha is Judea, Samaria. So, of course, he wants Israel to give up territory, as they did before with Gush Katif. So, the national religious parties, they already, including Smotrich, they see this as getting rid of Zionism. And this is what the Arab wants. The Arabs now, with this potential new government, leftist government, can make any claim. And the Arabs are the real winners of this new potential government. Who is actually winning, having a win-win situation? It's Hamas, it's Abu Mazen, it's Hezbollah, and it's Iran. And this leftist government, also with someone, with the first prime minister, probably Naftali Bennett, who is supposed to run the country for 2 years. But don't forget, 2/3 of the population don't want him as prime minister. With his 6 seats, he bribed, he threatened his way onto the prime minister seat. 6 seats he's got in the Knesset. The Likud has 31, and Lapid with his Yesh Atid has, I think, 18 or 19, something like this. So the Likud has 31 seats and could not make it, for whatever reason, to form a government. In order to form a government, a majority government, you have to have 61 seats. 61 seats, politicians, Knesset politicians supporting you. Then you can form a government. Likud didn't make it because of the smaller parties running over to Lapid. Lapid promised everything in order to become prime minister. And Naftali Bennett took the votes from the rights because he lied at his voters, took their votes from the right and went and marched to the left. And he's actually, don't believe his all his Orthodox shtick and whatever he has. He's a Reform Jew who is also agreeing to getting rid of Orthodox Judaism. Another agenda of this left-wing government now is to become an open country for everybody, not only for Jews, but for Christians and Arabs. Everybody, is going to has citizenship, equal, whatever. There's equality between Palestinians living in Israeli territory and Jews anyway, because we all have the same kind of ID card, the same rights and the same obligations, the same duties. But more and more Christians can come in, and Jerusalem is going to be. Bennett lives in Ranana. He doesn't care about Judaism. Most Jews living at the coast in Tel Aviv, Hot HaSharon, Ranana, Kfar Saba, Herzliya don't care about Jerusalem. Jerusalem for them is far away. It's all the nuts living there. What they always forget, if Jerusalem falls, they're going to be gone too. They're going to be next. And if I were thinking about making Aliyah, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. You experience anti-Semitism abroad in the diaspora. You may face anti-Semitism here, especially when you are a religious Jew. And it's going to make it more complicated now with kashrut. And it's also going to make it more complicated when you meet people, if they are really Jewish or not. Believe it or not, you will find converts to Judaism in Israel. I'm not talking about the Reform converts, mostly from the state or also from Germany. They are not Jewish anyway. They have the right to make Aliyah, but they are not Jewish. But it is also them hating religious Jews. And now, fasten your seatbelts. You have Orthodox Jews converted in Germany coming to Israel and here hating Haredim from Germany, and also Russians living in Germany, Russian non-Jews converting. You have German Gentiles and Russian Gentiles in Germany. Lots of Russians who convert, who even go the Orthodox way, so-called. You can't trust it really in Germany, but who convert in an Orthodox manner and come to Israel and here officially speak out against Haredim, Germans, well, and Russians. Their ancestors may have been, I don't know what, Nazis or something, but then they convert, they come to Israel, and here they speak out against Haredi society, although they don't even know Haredi society. They've never lived in Haredi society. They have no clue whatsoever. They hear something in the news. Maybe they met someone Haredi who wasn't really nice to them. I can imagine why. And, it's a crazy country. Israel, also the Likud, has made a lot of mistakes by letting in such people into the country, or Reform converts, and giving them the right to make Aliyah. And also we have a lot of intermarriage here, especially Olim, new immigrants coming from the States who have a non-Jewish partner. As you know, like you have a huge problem in the United States, also in England, with intermarriage. And when the woman is not Jewish, only the husband. So you have it many times here. Of course, the children are not Jewish. Children born out of such relationships are not Jewish. And these children who are not Jewish, but Israeli, I've seen this many times and I've heard about it from other people, go also, or even attack. I heard someone, a mother, a proud non-Jewish mother, once told me that one of her boys was attacking Haredim in Mea Shearim, and she was very proud. A non-Jewish woman married to a Jew. She was very proud of that. And this is just a disgrace. It has become too much in this country. And it's the fault of the Likud. It's not even the fault of the left-wing parties. It's also, the Likud, Netanyahu, is very much associated with evangelical missionary Christians who want to destroy Orthodox Judaism in order to bring back the second coming of their idol Yoshke, whatever. But the country has made many mistakes, any government. And we have to see, if you are a religious Jew and this new government, this leftist government is coming, it's not going to be nice for religious Jews unless you proclaim that you hate whoever, other religious Jews or Haredim or whatever. We once learned in yeshiva, and I've heard this many times, that all countries all over the world belong to the nations. The nations like Germany belongs to the Germans, France to the French, America to the Americans, whatever. But Israel is the only country in this world that doesn't belong to Israelis. Israel belongs to God. And we can follow God's way, more or less, and we can keep it. But as soon as we go astray, so to speak, and we are on the best way to do this, so we lose the country. And it says somewhere, I don't know if it's in the Nevi'im or Ketuvim, I've heard it many times, but I don't know who said it. Could be, I don't know, Tzvania? I don't know. If you know it, please let me know. That it says that before Mashiach is coming, 7 years before Mashiach is coming, the Jews will lose Israel again. And then after 7 years, Mashiach is coming. So we are, at the moment, we are on the best way to lose the country. Those German converts, for instance, they don't care. If everything is going down the drain here, they just go back to Germany, to wherever they came from, hating Haredim even more. So we have lots of dilemmas in this country. And I think that we're going to enter certain anti-Semitic things here. I'm glad I live in Jerusalem, so it's a little less. It's not at the coast where the real haters live. So I hope that we can avoid many, many things in Jerusalem. We have a strong, frum community here. And by the way, have you ever noticed that this new potential government is entirely Ashkenazi? Not only in Jerusalem, we have a Sephardi majority. So the Sfaradim, the Sephardi majority actually in this country is entirely left out. So think about them, how they feel with this crazy Ashkenazim, this leftist Ashkenazim. Many of them are leftist. So to deal with that, because they don't care about Sephardi Judaism or any Sfaradim or anything. And Jerusalem is, the majority in Jerusalem is actually Sephardi, and not only in Jerusalem, also at many other places. So there's a lot to think about. And I feel that it's going to be more anti-Semitic also in Israel. Although you hear those politicians, those leftists, speaking up as soon as there's as soon as there's something anti-Semitic going on in the diaspora. When you look at here, also at the Israeli leftist media, they are the same anti-Semites. There's no Jews are still getting beaten up by Palestinians in Lot, for instance. It hasn't stopped. You don't hear about this abroad anymore. And these politicians like Bennett, they don't care if a Jew is getting beaten up. He wants to be prime minister with his 6 lousy seats in the Knesset and the majority of the population that doesn't even want him as prime minister. Nobody wants to see him. He's not going to be my prime minister. No. Okay. I'm stopping the bad news here. Sorry. And thank you for listening. And maybe you got a little impression about what's going on in Israel. So we will see. Hope for the best. Pray. And hopefully we are not getting kicked out of the country by God. Hopefully something is changing. And please let me know the source from the Nevi'im or Ketuvim.